have open office hours, leave space for your team to reach out to you. When they do come in, one of the first things you should say, how can I help? Let them know that your purpose there is to help them flourish, not only on the team, not only on the project, but in their career and in their life.
Welcome to the Team Amplifier Podcast. I'm your host, Byron Summerdahl. Here you'll be inspired by industry leaders who build flourishing tech teams. Stay tuned and prepare to be amplified.
3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, I'm here with Mitch Lusas, and today we're talking about bringing authentic positivity into your tech team. And I'm so excited for you to hear what we got to talk about today. It's going to be a great discussion. But before we do that, Mitch, I want to let you have a chance to tell us more about who you are. I know that you're a fractional CTO. You've got some years of experience under your belt. You've got, especially working in the entertainment industry, and I don't want to steal your thunder, but I love the fact that you've worked for some of my favorite networks, which is going to be Paramount, Netflix, Disney. You're an avid hiker, you're a board gamer, you love to drink chai. I mean, like the list goes on and on of all these things that I just resonate with. And so just like bring me down from the clouds, tell me that you're a real person.
Brian, thanks so much. Appreciate being on. Yeah. So for me, I have been working in the entertainment tech space for over 16 years. And I actually started building remote teams and managing them before it was cool. So long before the lockdowns back in 2009. And that's when I fell in love with it. I really loved working with people all over the world. And then being someone who's tribal focused, I build communities kind of wherever I go. And so I became really intrigued about how you can build a passionate, excited team in your workplace, because these are the people you're working with, you're spending so much time with, to be a good experience. So that's a little bit about.
Yeah, we want them to flourish.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so that's what this podcast is all about, man. This is perfect.
It is perfect. That's why I was like, this is exciting. This will be a fun chat for us.
Yeah. So tell me about a book that you've been reading, or maybe a YouTube channel that you've been watching lately. Because I know you told me you got a different take on this, but what's something that's been making an impact on you lately?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I do read, or I should say I listen. I do the Audible, and I have been listening to Jeff Bezos's book, and there's some things I've been pulling from that. He's got some really good concepts, but most recently I've been actually spending a lot of time following a lot of YouTubers who are talking about AI. The space is changing so quickly, the tool sets, that I'm finding a lot of value in staying on top of what's happening in the AI space in terms of new tools, in terms of how they're being implemented and challenges that teams are facing. And I was just actually listening to Theo. He's t3.gg on YouTube. I highly recommend him. Getting into good tech chats, and he'll review things live as well, like unfiltered, but then he'll create these snippets. And one of the interesting things that he just had yesterday, he was talking about, was this idea about how we trust AI and where we shouldn't trust AI. And there was a company that trusted AI to implement these changes in the code, and it ended up triggering millions of additional events, driving up their costs within one single day. And I think that showcases, again, the care that we need to have when we're working with AI. We can't, a lot of people are utilizing it for agentic workflows, and that's great, but we're still at a place where you need to have some rails for it. You need to have these checks and balances, because you can end up with very high bills. You can end up with some of these issues that can come about if you just let it run rampant. There's a lot of people that are saying, oh, anyone can code. And it is true for simple apps. But when you start looking at more complex things that are in production, and you start talking about apps that are relying on revenue, a little bit more care needs to be taken. And so it's just one of those things that we're in, where it's like trying to figure out the right amount of trust that we should have, accepting the benefits, but being aware of the potential concerns. So yeah, Theo delves into more of that. So I highly recommend him if anyone's interested in staying up to date on tech tools, AI, he's a good source.
As you're talking about that responsibility that we need with AI, and how you might slip up and mess up a while case loop, you might end up like accidentally sending a billion requests and messing up the invoice at the end of the month, or like hitting all of the limits, or who knows. It
Yeah.
reminds me of a time that I, way before AI, of course, but I messed up a loop, and it was with an email sending algorithm. So it was going to send out, and it did send out thousands of emails. And I can't imagine doing that with something that actually costs like real money. Like, so sending out emails, you can at least send a follow-up email saying, I'm sorry that went out, but you can't really take back compute once you used it.
Oh my gosh, no. And that, man, that happened to me. We were working on a massive migration one time. This was a couple of years ago, and it was a major migration on a lot.
Wait, Mitch, is
Yeah.
this confession time, by the way?
Oh, it can
Are
be
you
harsh,
like segueing into confession time? Or should this be your confession time?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it can be both. I have another one that's slightly kind of on topic, but I can give you two.
All right, I'm gonna let's take them both, because I love these things. But yeah, tell us about this embarrassing mistakes that you made as a tech leader or whatever it is. I'm waiting with bated breath. I'm excited.
That's good. That's great. Yeah. So I've got like, I have a tech mistake I've made, and then I also have like a social mistake that I've made, and both great learning lessons. So one of them deals with what we were talking about, which is this idea of, accidentally making a compute mistake where you're getting a larger bill. And it was when we were doing a big migration, and we were taking a lot of care in the data architecture and what needed to be changed over. And it was a lot of data that needed to be re-architected and moved over, and we needed to do it quickly. We were under an aggressive timeline. So we actually spun up a Google instance for compute and to work on this. And we tested it out, and then we determined, okay, we're actually going to use something else instead. But we forgot to turn off that server. As you can imagine, it helped us with the test, and that was great. But about a month later, we all of a sudden got this massive bill because we left it spinning. I will say this: it's one of to Google's benefit is if that does happen, once, they'll be like, okay, we'll be a little forgiving. So it's nice, but it is important, even when you've got you're under aggressive timelines and you've got a lot that you're juggling. These types of things, it's really important to have that checklist and say, okay, we spun up something, let's make sure we spin it down, because I've run into so many times talking with other engineering leaders will be like, oh yeah, we spun up and did this test and forgot to turn off the service. And then all of a sudden they've got this recurring fee. And it's not until someone says, why do we have this fee? And they're like, oh, we're not supposed to. That was only supposed to be 1 month, and months have passed. And that seems like that's common. So that's a tech one. I recommend, like, make sure you're auditing your list of expenses, and you've got someone who's auditing.
And avoid rush when you can too.
Yeah.
Like, we're never at our best under the gun. Like, we might like it, but we're not at our best.
No. And I think that's the thing, is it's like, and it can be addictive too, right? To be under the gun. But at the same time, it is that realization that it's in the moments of saying, okay, I've got a few minutes, not that I need to feed it. I need to use that up and say, okay, let me take a step back. Let me evaluate. Let me get the big picture. And this ties into something that's really interesting, because we're seeing this again. I'm bringing back AI. Sorry, it's such a top topic right now, which is we've already become so efficient as people, even before AI. Now our efficiency is even skyrocketing higher. What do we do with that? Do we take the efficiency and say, now we're going to work more and harder? And I think that's the wrong call. I think the right call is to say, okay, you've got additional time. You've got additional mental bandwidth. Take that time to reflect. Take that time to plan. Take that time to research, to fill in new information. Because again, creativity is connecting disparate concepts. But if you're so focused, A, you might have those disparate concepts in your own brain and you won't be able to connect them because you're so focused. But B, you're not going to be able to fill in new data because you're going to be so busy. So I think, AI is giving us a great opportunity. As leaders, we need to be seeing and set this as a team for our teams, not saying, great, I'm going to drive and work you harder. No, it's saying, great, this is opening you up to opportunities to grab new information. I want you to bubble up new ideas. I want you to spend that time looking at the data, understanding our users, understanding the market. I want you to spend that time evaluating and becoming more strategic. That, I think, is better rather than saying, I need more widgets produced. I think that would be a downfall of the technology. So that's one. The other embarrassing mistake I had is, and this ties a little bit onto the topic, which is, working with remote teams, we all have there's different cultures.
Yeah.
And I'm someone I'm high energy. I've got a lot of positivity, and it's a natural positivity, but it's one that I have learned is important to showcase and to share, to be a light to the teams. But there are some cultures where being overly enthusiastic and happy is actually seen as, it actually draws mistrust. Like people are like, woo, this person is not being authentic. They're actually like, what do they want? They're trying to manipulate me. And I learned this because I have built teams, a lot of teams in Eastern Europe. And there's the Eastern European culture, I've learned since, they mistrust overly enthusiastic and happy people at times. And it was funny because I had these teams where they would come on and I would be all, like, hey guys, how you doing? Like high energy. And because every time that I start a meeting, there's a difference between you jump into a meeting and it's, hey, how's it going? And you jump into a meeting like, hey, welcome, great to see you, So here, in the West, typically it's like, oh, that's great. In the US, that's a great kind of bump. But in Eastern Europe, it was kind of like, they were kind of like pushed back. And there was a mistrust that they had. But what was really interesting was, and this was a misstep, but also something that helped to showcase authenticity, was there was this one person who kept missing our standard operating procedures for handling this one type of task. They weren't going through the checklist correctly. They weren't setting that up correctly. And it was starting to affect the rest of the team. And they were coming to me and saying, I keep having to clean up after them. And so I'm in a meeting with this person and I say, I've already told them, I've already coached them. And as we're talking, we're pair programming. They start doing the wrong thing again, right in front of me, after tons of coaching, after talking about it. And I got mad and I just got very stern. And the content of what I said was accurate, but my tone was wrong. And I was very, very forceful. And I realized I had been a little too hard. And I apologized immediately there. And I said, my content was accurate. My tone, the way I execute on it was not. But what was great was she was able to see, this is a real person. Like, he's just really open with his emotions. We have to be in control. We have to be accountable for our emotions. And I was, and I actually even apologized later. And because I really just hit me that I crossed that. But it actually built up trust in the relationship, because then she saw, okay, I understand him a lot better. I see now that he's very open with his emotions. He's not hiding things back. He's going to tell me what he thinks. And we've since become friends. We've since become someone that we trust really well. And then she was one of the ones who was telling me, she's like, in Eastern Europe, when people are like as enthusiastic as you are, we kind of don't trust them always. She's like, but it's great to see. And since then, a lot of the teams have now gotten to not necessarily my level of enthusiasm, but they've gotten close. They've opened up a lot. So yeah, that was kind of another misstep with some lessons learned.
Man, I've had so many missteps like that. I appreciate you bringing that up. And I too have had a great team. All of my team are from Latin America pretty much. And so over the years, whenever I've had a misstep like that, I've had great people that were willing to let me know, hey, this is kind of how that came off for the people in the meeting. And, oh, okay. Thank you. So kudos to you for generating enough trust with your team that they're willing to be honest with you about how things come off.
Yeah. And I think that, it's almost like what you're talking about there. It's really dependent on when someone gives you feedback, how do you take it? Do you become defensive or do you become inquisitive? Mm-hmm. And so I would say lean towards inquisitive. Someone comes back with feedback,
but not like
great.
Spanish Inquisition, not like
no,
that.
Not like
more like curious. Like I actually genuinely want to know why.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah. I want to learn more. Yeah. And then that interest, I think, really drives the trust for people to say, wow, they care, and they're open to what I have to say. And I think that provides a great environment for teams.
Yeah. And great segue, by the way, into authentic positivity. And we want to bring that to our teams. So what do we mean by bringing authentic positivity?
Yeah. It hit me early in my career. I was reading tons of books before getting into Hollywood. And one of the recommendations they said is have a very clear delineation between who you are in your personal life and your professional life. And there was like a lot of books that were talking about this. So I took that advice and I was like, all right, I got to separate this. That was bad advice. I don't recommend it. I think it's important to be integral to who you are from the start. When you're first considering a role, be integral to who you are, because you want that is going to be the key to your success internally, for you feeling good, and for other people being able to develop those relationships. And so I messed that up a little bit early in my career. And I remember when I started changing, I was like, I just want to kind of be who I am. I don't want to have this type of filter. I want to be as enthusiastic. And people are like, sometimes you come across too strong. And I'm like, then that might not be the right fit. And that's okay. And I remember I was working with this one company. I was in an executive type of role. And this was still a little earlier in my career. And the company was so toxic that on Slack, they had a toxicity index that people would check in before they came in, because it was hybrid working, coming in or staying at home.
Not like an official, like a company driven dashboard of toxicity.
No, not right? Like an official,
it's more just like a water cooler.
Yes. Yeah.
People would be like, what's the toxicity meter at today?
Yeah. They'd be like, should I come in because it's hybrid, or should I come in later? And I remember with that, I made a concerted effort to bring positivity, to be a light in the workplace, to showcase hope, to showcase a care. I remember one day I was beaten down by the toxicity, and I was walking through the hall and I was just like wearing the weight on me. And one of the customer support team took me aside, saw me in the hall, took me aside, and it's like, Mitch, what's wrong? And I was like, yeah, it's just all these things. And he was like, Mitch, I hate to put this on you, but we need you to maintain that positive force. He's like, we're all on edge. He's like, and you help set the standard that helps us get through the day. And I realized the importance of being a leader in that. And I realized the importance I had on that workplace was I gave that sense of like, there is this goodness. Things can be toxic, but that's okay. We can continue to persevere throughout it. And that was one of the moments where I was like, okay, I've really got to focus on being that positive force and creating that positive, stable, safe environment. And there's so many studies that have showcased about great teams. And what does it require? Stability, a sense of safety, is so crucial and so critical. And then another instance happened years later. And I talked a little bit about this earlier, which is I jumped into this meeting with this person who was having a hard day. And I didn't know that they're having a hard day, but I jumped in the meeting and I just had this inclination. I had this gut feel. It was remote. And I immediately was like, hey, how's it going? And that type of enthusiasm. And immediately she's like, oh my gosh. And I said her name. And she's like, you have no idea how much I needed that. She's like, that meant the world. Just that intro, the first couple seconds of the meeting. And she's like, I've been having a hard day. And just for you to come in like this, she's like, brightened everything. I'm ready for it. And since then I was like, I'm going to start every meeting, every time I see somebody with that level of energy. And they might be like, whoa, that's too much for me. And I'm like, it's okay. You don't have to take that. But if you want it, because again, there's such a difference between jumping to a meeting and you're wearing the weight and you're like, oh gosh, hey, how's it going? And you're off versus, hey, how's it going? That type of energy, you can feel it. And so you have to ask yourself, which would you rather have? Then you have to ask yourself, if that's the case, if you're going to choose, the welcoming, the friendly, the caring, if that's what you want, that's what you give. And I've been instilling that in my teams for years now. And it really helps because it's this sense that no matter what, listen, we're always going to face troubles. That's part of, what we're working together with. But it's the idea of who are we working together with? Are we having fun with the troubles? Because every week we're going to have challenges. But the idea is we approach it by saying, all right, we've got some challenges this week. Here are the challenges. And that's a different perspective than, oh, we got more challenges this week. Gosh, we got to get through them.
Mm-hmm.
And when you've got the sense of, hey, let's do this together as a team. I'm excited to do this with you. That small little thing can change a whole team dynamic and get everybody on board and saying, all right, let's do it. And gets them saying, yeah, we're always going to have challenges, but I get to face these challenges with these amazing people who every day brighten my day and make me excited to work on them. That's the type of environment I try to make.
Like what you just said, also, it helps to qualify really what we're talking about. We're not talking about like going into a meeting or going into whatever situation you're in and being falsely positive.
Ooh.
Because that definitely rubs anybody wrong, whether you're from Eastern Europe or not.
Right.
That kind of like cheerleader-ish,
Yeah.
even though everything is going to hell in a handbasket, but I'm going to put on a smile because that's what we do. Like that's
True.
especially how it is in the South of the United States, the Southern states. It's like, oh, bless his heart. Everything is, you're supposed to wear a smile.
Yeah.
And you're not allowed. Like, especially if you go to church, you're supposed to wear nice, beautiful clothes and supposed to wear a smile. Everything's supposed to be perfect when everything might be falling apart in the background.
Yeah.
And you're not supposed to let anybody know. So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about authentic positivity. So tell me, how can you be authentically positive? You kind of alluded to it just a second ago, but
Yeah.
I want you to unpack it a little bit more. How can you be authentically positive even when things really are kind of crappy?
Yeah. It's a really interesting point because it comes down to perspective. And there's this meme. And the meme is that there's a homeless person sitting next to a successful business person. And it says, how did you end up here? And both of them said, my father was an alcoholic. And that's the idea. It's this idea that you can choose how you stay motivated, and you can choose how problems affect you. And yeah, they can wear down on you, but you need to be authentic to that. You need to, because if you're not, that inauthenticity, then all of a sudden people just see it as fake. But if you come at it and you say, okay, yes, we have this problem, but again, having gratitude, authentic gratitude, this is where it's kind of key, is to say, I choose gratitude and I choose joy. That's a choice that you can choose regardless of your situation. And that's kind of the starting point for me, choosing joy, choosing gratitude. So when you get those problems, you say, oh my gosh, these are bad problems that we're facing. But then you say, okay, where can I be grateful? Well, actually, I'm grateful that we can actually play with this technology. I'm grateful that we have this audience. So if you've got a large user base, or if you've got a potential user base, or whatever that might be, to say, where am I grateful in that? And focus on that. And then be real about the challenges and say, we have some major challenges ahead of us, but then project forward and say, if you've got the right team, you say, but we're going to get through it. I don't know how. I have no idea how, but that's going to be the fun part. Like, honestly, this looks hard. And I remember I had this happen actually recently where one of our platforms, we realized that there were some issues happening with the AI model. And I was pair programming with one of my junior engineers. And he got to see live as I'm realizing the fault. And I was like, oh my gosh, we've had users who've been experiencing this issue. I'm like, oh my gosh. And he was seeing it live. And he commented, he's like, I really appreciated watching your reaction live. He's like, and seeing how it affected you, but how every single time you would talk about that, you would then turn to positive. He was like, you brought up, you're like, oh my gosh, all these users did this. Okay, but at least this happened. And at least this happened. He's like, you kept hanging on and looking for the hope, looking for the positive, not just to be fake, but to say, okay, it's so easy to spiral negatively. How can you find those pieces of positivity to ground you, to lift you above it, so you don't just spiral?
I wasn't going to interrupt you because you were on a roll, but when you mentioned a meme, and thinking about the context of what we're talking about, like inauthentic positivity. I think of that comic dog surrounded by a fire where he's like, this is fine. He's sitting at a table with a coffee and imminent death, but this is fine. I'm okay with all of this.
It's like, look around. Are you aware of your surroundings? I will say this. Everybody says, they're like, if I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be fun, people will say, we know Mitch's definition of fun, and it's not exactly the same definition but it is true. They're like, we know we're going to be in for some challenge. And because, again, it's perspective, but everyone knows it. Everyone knows, I'm like, all right, let's get ready for some fun, and it's kind of an in-joke now.
It's one of my favorite lines. I love to say this is fun in a client meeting when they first start talking to me about something that they want to do. And of course, we're going to be able to build it because we're wizards of code, and we can do anything. We can materialize things out of nothing. Yeah. And of course we can do, but I know it's going to be like 10,000 backflips, and we're going to have to learn new, grow new muscles and learn new skills. And so, this is going to be fun. Yeah. So I love that. I love that phrase. Yeah. I will continue using it proudly.
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
So let's bring it back to the theme of this podcast, which is all about human flourishing. Like, we're trying to help tech leaders to grow and nurture their teams so that their teams can flourish. What does this bringing authentic positivity have to do with human flourishing?
I think it really comes down to where we succeed. And, again, pointing back to those studies that have talked about what makes a team successful. And when you're leading a team, when you're building a team, these are the people you're spending a large part of your life with, your week with. And you can either have a positive experience, which then can actually translate into your life, your non-work life, or you can end up having a stressful experience. And I think that when you've got something that's positive, it opens the opportunities for you to see more possibilities around you, see the possibilities in other people, and to want to improve that, to want to improve their lives, to improve your life. But that only comes about, in my view, if you've got authentic positivity, if you've got this way of being able to choose the positive when it's so much easier to be negative. And when you can change your environment that way, and those are the people around you, I think that kind of allows for there to be an opportunity for positive growth, more than if you're constantly on edge, or you've got falseness, you're not being true to yourself, or you are choosing to spiral or choosing the negative. And it can be a simple choice. It's a lot of people think, I'm just going to choose the negative this one time or this time, but it can be a slippery slope, because it can be easier to choose that. It can be easier to complain than it can be to choose the positive and say, here's the opportunity we have before us. Here's how we can grow, and here's how we can make this fun.
So if this is so good, which I know it is, if this is so good, why don't more tech leaders bring authentic positivity?
That is a great question. I don't know. I would think that, but it is true. I run into this a lot of times. Part of me thinks it's because we've been taught how to lead teams. And I've seen people who they champion the idea of creating hostile, fearful places to work. And they say, well, I'm going to constantly give them the impossible, and I'm going to constantly demand that of them. And I'm going to keep a barricade between them and me. And that's going to force them to accomplish great things. And I think people will look and see some of where that's worked in the past, and they choose that. But I think, you can go down that route, but I think that there's a detriment. I think that's where you look at higher turnover. I also think that's where you look at missed opportunities, and they don't realize that there's missed opportunities because they're getting done what they wanted. They said, jump this high, and people jumped that high. But what they didn't do is jump higher and also swim. And the moment you build this type of positivity, new opportunities arise. And I think the biggest reason why I would think other tech leaders do not go down that positivity route is they haven't been taught, they don't see the value, and they're getting good enough from their own, from what they're currently doing. And people are comfortable. They're comfortable with what they know. And they're like, I get the results from here. They just don't know how much better it would be if they chose authentic positivity.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I don't think anybody's waking up in the morning saying, I'm going to be a bad person today. I'm going to be negative today. Nobody wakes up with that, like that hope in their life. They're not thinking when they go to bed at night, how can I make people's lives worse tomorrow? I think a lot of us just kind of fall into the pit of negativity. I think it's just natural for us to complain.
Yeah.
We love to complain. It's fun, I guess.
Yeah.
Unless you've been doing it long enough, now you're kind of reaping the negative benefits, the detriments of it. But I think people just kind of at their default, if they're not being intentional about things, I think they just fall into negativity. I was speaking with a fractional CTO the other day, and he was telling me about like he hasn't been able to get a job. He's trying to find a new client and nobody's opening the door for him. And so while he was talking with me, everything was negative. And I was thinking, and the whole time I was thinking, maybe it's because all you ever talk about is the negative side of everything.
Right.
No, it's not that you have to be positive and lie and like everything's great, but you can definitely reframe things, and you can definitely like make an effort to be intentional about things. It's not, yes, there's a cloud, but most clouds have that silver lining that you can look for if you just try.
Yeah.
So I just think people are not paying attention.
Yeah. I think you've nailed it. I think they're not paying attention. And I think it is easier to do the default. And it reminds me of something else, which is that many times if you're passive, you'll become passive aggressive. And if you're assertive, you're going to be assertive. You won't need to get to that aggressive state. And I define aggression in this way of aggression being, I'm taking away your options. I'm forcing you to do this thing. Versus assertive saying, this is what I'm looking for. And then also asking, what are you looking for? And this helps bridge dialogue. And I think the same thing happens with people who are struggling with negativity being their default. They look at it and are like, I don't want to be false positive though. And it's like, true, no one wants that. But then it's the hard lesson of saying, how can you find the positivity in the difficulty? How can you see that challenge as growth? How can you see this as how can you, again, you have gratitude for the challenges and the problems that you're facing. And sometimes it can be hard for people to recalibrate because that's not a calibration. That's not a way that they've been taught to view the world. And I remember there's this one time I was working on building a team culture, and someone's like, oh, there's always going to be gossip at work. And it struck me. I was like, like he was talking about like, negative gossip. And I was like, I don't think that that's true. I think that's true if we accept it. But I've built many teams where we didn't accept that. And it was great. And it was all about, someone starts talking about someone else in a way. And it's like, oh, hey, have you talked to them about this? And you instill that in the culture. And it's the same type of thing because you say, there are these things that can take apart a team. And we want to protect the team. We want to protect our trust with one another. And we want everybody to trust one another. And in order to do that, we need to trust that when I'm not in a meeting with you, you're holding me in respect. And when and I'm holding you in respect. And if we start seeing a slip, you got to hold each other accountable. And that means hold each other accountable. It's not just like the leader holding the team accountable. It goes both ways and being able to be open about that. And that usually starts by admitting your faults too. Anyway, sorry, I'd go on a different route with that, but yeah.
No, actually, that's a very worthy tangent. I mean, it might even be a whole other episode, but like when I asked you, what do we mean by bringing positive, like authentic positivity? We were talking mostly about what we do as leaders. But I think what you also touched on just now was that as leaders, we have a responsibility to help our team to be authentically positive, to teach them to reframe, to teach them to look for the silver lining, to teach them to avoid commiseration sessions and complaining and backstabbing and things like that. We don't accept things like that because we are about intentionally bringing authentic positivity. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
So let's just imagine that somebody out there in the audience is feeling so inspired by what we've just said. And now they're like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start right now. I'm going to send an email. I'm going to set up a meeting. I'm excited to actually start bringing positive, or I'm excited to bring authentic positivity to everything in my company as a tech leader. I'm going to hit some pitfalls though. So Mitch, tell me, what am I going to find along the path of trying to start doing this?
Along the way, the first thing that you're going to find, I would say, is going to be doubt, self-doubt, and also kind of feeling like you have to self-censor in order to be the ideal leader. Because you might have been taught what an ideal leader is, and you have to figure out, what is the ideal version of you as a leader being positive look like? And that self-reflection is going to be really important, because that's going to be, you need to be integral to yourself. And if you're not, your team's going to notice, and you're going to notice, your body's going to notice. You will be under stress. You will be uneasy every time you jump into a call. So I think the first thing is really doing an accounting of yourself and say, in 6 months, what does that ideal version of me as a leader look like? And is that integral to who I am? Is that how I want people to view me? And then when you do that, you are going to be tempted to fall back into your old ways. But that's where you got to keep that ideal vision in your head. And if you do that, and then here's the other thing, tell your team that. Tell your team, hey, FYI, I'm wanting to grow as a leader. And the way you can have these discussions, by the way, is when you're meeting with the team, you say, and this is great because this is going to open up that trust. You say, here's how I want to grow as a leader. In 6 months, a year, I'm hoping to grow here. I recognize that I'm not there right now. And they're going to be like, that's crazy. They're opening up. And these aren't one-on-ones. And you say, how do you want to grow as a leader? How do you want to grow in this company? How do you want to grow in the team? How do you want the team to view you in 6 to 12 months? And now all of a sudden, you can hold them accountable. They can hold you accountable. And now that is an authentic opening up. And here's the benefit too. You can tie that now into, and I've done this many times, you can now tie that directly into the things that they're working on. So all of a sudden, if they start doing something that steps out of that bounds, you can easily pull them aside and you can say, authentically, I know who you want to be. You want to be seen as this, but I saw you take a couple of actions, or you did a couple of things, you said a couple of things that went against that. I wanted to bring that up and hear your thoughts. And by doing that, they now also know how they can come to you and hold you accountable. But then they see you as a partner to their betterment. And so anyway, that's going to be the challenge. And there are some tips on how to get through it, because you're not in this alone. It's not just you. If you think you're in it alone, it's going to be so much harder. Your team is there. You're building together. You're growing together.
Love it. Love it. So before we get away today, because we're about to run out of time, but I've got to hear a story from your side about a time when bringing authentic positivity led to unexpected results with your team, with you as a person, you name it.
Yeah. It would be recent. There was a recent team I was working with, and we were given a crazy, some would say like nearly impossible task. We had to get through several different projects quickly without a lot of information. We had a very tight timeline, and we had a lot of bureaucracy that we had to jump through. So in many ways, there were a lot of opportunities for people to get disheartened, and it was working through the holidays. So it was like so many options to be disheartened. But I opened myself up. I had open office hours every single time people would come in. How can I help? I'd be there. I'd be like, I'll be your junior engineer, whatever problem you need to unblock. And I was always there. And we were like sharing in that, but getting excited about the possibility of what we could actually accomplish. And by doing that, several things happened. Number one, multiple people on the team grew in a brief period of time. We're talking like a 2 to 3 month period of time. Multiple people took on whole new skill sets beyond what they'd expected. 2, we hit all of our goals. Plus we did more because people were excited. And I remember we had finished everything and everyone, the contract was up and everyone could sign off. Everyone could go home and spend time with their families. But the majority of people decided to stay on and just hang out. And that type of relationship, and since then, those relationships, we've maintained the relationships, we become friends, we're helping each other in our careers. That is something that takes it beyond just accomplish the task to say, okay, we are growing as a people and we're going to be in each other's lives to help each other improve as we move forward. So that's just, that was probably one of the most recent things, which was just good to see when you can create that safe, stable environment. You get high performance, you get people growing, and you get people saying, I'm going to be committed beyond just being part of this team. I'm going to be committed to saying, I want you to challenge me in my life and I want to challenge you in yours. Let's continue to grow beyond this project. Yeah. So that would be my,
I think that's what it sounds like or what it looks like when people are flourishing.
It is. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So Mitch, okay, from your perspective, if somebody wants to start doing this right away, what's one thing that tech leaders should do tomorrow or now, immediately, to begin promoting human flourishing in their team?
Yeah. Really promoting that human flourishing for people to be able to flourish as a team and to flourish as individuals. It's about creating that stable environment. And I think you can do that with 3 easy steps. Step number 1.
Ooh, I like 3 easy steps. Here we go.
3 easy steps. Start every meeting with joy and to see the person that you're meeting with. Welcome them. Don't just enter the meeting. 2, have open office hours. Leave space for your team to reach out to you. Don't be that leader that no one can get a hold of. Give those opportunities for them to connect with you so that they start feeling that stability, that safety. Have recurring open office hours. And 3, when they do come in, one of the first things you should say, how can I help? Let them know that your purpose there is to help them flourish, not only on the team, not only on the project, but in their career and in their life. And those 3, I think will sit you in a good place.
Awesome. I want to try them right away. We were talking earlier about the open office hours, and it reminded me of college days whenever my professor had open office hours, and I actually felt like welcome to go and talk with my professor about whatever during those office hours, and so I want to project that same kind of, or I want to give that same kind of welcoming feeling to my team. So that's something that I'd like to implement immediately. Mitch, this has been such a cool conversation. I can't wait to see one of the new things that's going to come out of Hollywood that you had a hand in, and just can't wait to see what happens next with you in your career. So thank you so much for being on the show and for blessing us with your kind words and your encouragement.
Thank you so much, Byron. Pleasure to be on, and love that you are focusing on helping people flourish in their lives and in their careers.
Mitch, how can people connect with you?
Yeah, so the best ways to connect with me are going to be either on LinkedIn, so look for Mitch Lusas, or going to be on Instagram, same thing. The username is MITCHLUSAS. And so either on Instagram or on LinkedIn, you can catch me there.
Awesome. We'll put those in the show notes. We'll make sure that people can get in touch with you and follow you. Awesome. Well, thanks, Mitch, for such a great episode, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
This has been another episode of the Team Amplifier podcast. Thanks for joining us. Now, get out there and be a team amplifier.